Hi, everybody. I am Missi Matthews. Welcome to the Steelers Virtual Roundtable. I am pleased to be joined by Bob Labriola and Arthur Moats today. A lot of news and notes to go over, guys. This would have been the start of OTAs for many teams across the NFL. Those, of course, are virtual. And another thing that was virtual this week was the NFL owners' meetings. They were supposed to happen earlier this offseason. They got pushed back, and owners did them just how we're doing right now through their computers, phones, whatever works for them. So the big thing coming out of it this week, guys, was the strengthening of the Rooney Rule. So, Labs, I want to start with you because you did have a chance to hear Steelers president Art Rooney II talk after some decisions were made, some things were tabled, and your big takeaway from what they were able to do.
Well, I think that there was an acknowledgement that the Rooney Rule, when it was instituted, served its purpose. But with, like so many other rules and laws and things in America, the longer it's in effect, a lot of times more effort is put in to figuring out a way around it than actually just trying to use it the way it was intended and maybe to even benefit yourself. And so, the league decided that it needed to strengthen things a little bit. And, I cannot disagree with that. When you look at the last couple of hiring cycles in the NFL, minorities were not really getting any jobs. And so now the Rooney Rule will require 2 minorities to be interviewed for every head coaching position, 1 minority for any senior football / general manager position, 1 minority for every coordinator position, and 1 minority or female for every, they call it a senior position, either in the league office in New York or with the teams. Now, what to me, the interesting part of that, they've used the stick, but the only person / team ever to be penalized for violation of the Rooney Rule were the Detroit Lions, Matt Millen, when they hired Steve Mariucci, and they were fined $200,000. Now I think they're going to try the carrot approach, which is to reward teams for either hiring minorities, retaining minorities, those kinds of things. But that was tabled, and they're trying to figure out exactly how it's going to work, what they want to reward the teams with. It's going to be draft picks, it sounds like, either moving up or down in the round or an additional compensatory pick in a certain round. Roger Goodell did indicate, though, that even though while that resolution was tabled, he said, don't think that we tabled it because we didn't have enough support. So I'll take him at his word, and because he said we're interested in more discussion, and a lot of times some additional / better ideas result from more discussion. So there's another meeting here shortly, 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that, he said. And maybe it comes up again then, maybe it's voted on and approved then, but this is the path that they're going down, and we'll have to see how it works.
Arthur, this has certainly sparked a lot of conversation. Is it fair to, as Labs was saying, one of the proposals was to reward teams via extra draft picks or moving up spots, different things like that? What is your take on this as a former player, and just that there has to be an incentive to get people to do what Dan Rooney originally tried to do when they came up with this rule, to give everybody a fair shot to maybe get their foot in the door?
Yeah, I mean, initially when you think of the fact you have to incentivize owners to employ minorities in these executive positions, in these head coaching positions, is definitely unfortunate. But at the same time, I am proud of the fact that they are taking steps to make that better. They are taking steps to improve the hiring process, to make it more fair, not just for people that are African American, but for any minority, whether it's a woman as well. I think it's important that it does include the other different genders and things like that, because a lot of times we just get so focused on one particular ethnicity or one particular race that we overlook the other races as well. So I do like that element of it. Now, when we're speaking on the heavy incentives that we were talking about in terms of the draft picks potentially moving up, comp picks and things like that, I know from what I've seen from different minority candidates who were, who were interviewing for head coaching spots and things like that, they initially didn't like the idea. They felt that you're kind of undermining them or undercutting their authority, because as soon as they get in the door, everyone thinks that, hey, you only were here or hired because of the incentive. So I think that is something that Roger Goodell is definitely going to have to look into a little bit more. And when we already speak on the lack of minority coaches and executives, I do feel personally that in these meetings where you're talking about something like this, to have that minority voice represented a little bit more in the decision-making process, that they should look to find some way to get some other people in there having those conversations with them. Because right now you're having the people that essentially have falling short of the Rooney Rule making a decision on how to improve the Rooney Rule without talking to the people that it really affects.
All right, as Lab said, there will be more conversations about this because they tabled some things does not mean it's going to go away. So we will be following this closely, of course, as we move throughout the offseason. Another big Steelers happening this week, Ben Roethlisberger. Always said that he was going to shave the beard, shave the hair, get a little trim when he could throw a really good football, an NFL caliber football in his eyes. Guys, when you saw the video, him moving, the strength, I know it was a short clip, but Arthur, we'll start with you on this one. What were your thoughts?
Man, I was extremely excited. I feel like through this quarantine, that's been the one thing that's gotten lost. We haven't had a chance to see him in OTAs. We haven't had a chance to see an update and things like that. So when you post that video, I mean, it makes Steeler Nation go crazy, because you're finally getting to see some of the things that we had and some of the questions that we had in terms of how far can you throw it? Is it going to be zip? Is it NFL caliber? And the thing that I liked even more so was this. When I thought about Ben Roethlisberger putting that video out there, I said, he's not going to put that out there unless he felt 100% confident that he was going to be good to go this season. You don't put a video like that out there and get the expectations risen to where they are now if you have any doubt in your mind. So the fact that he did that made me extremely confident. And then you obviously hear Ryan Switzer. He did an interview, I believe, with Mark Kabali a day or two later. And he was speaking on how the zip on the passes and, all the different things that you really want to hear. So it has me extremely excited about him going forward.
Yeah, Labs, I thought too, we've heard Art Rooney II say it. Kevin Colbert has had to say it numerous times. Mike Tomlin on a Steelers Nation Unite huddle last week. Everyone has said, yes, he is doing well. We are getting great reports. I think to actually be able to see it, even though it was short, that did maybe cement it for people who are kind of wishy-washy and not sure if anybody would say anything negative at this point.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that's true. And the thing that, I've been saying all along, and as I was watching the video, I was thinking it as well. To me, the most important thing is that there have been no setbacks. I've never had to rehabilitate an injury, but what I've been told, medical people who are doing the rehab, if you have a setback, that's bad. If you're a little behind schedule maybe, or those kinds of things, especially this off season where we don't know when training camps are going to start. We don't know when the preseason is going to start or the regular season is going to start. So being behind a little bit, I think under our present circumstances, is not that necessarily a bad thing. But if Ben had been sustaining setbacks, that's bad. And he has not had any setbacks from the very beginning, from when he had the surgery. And so to me, that's the overwhelmingly positive thing about this. He certainly looked good to me. The only thing I would want to know is, I know that Ben and Brett Kiesel are friends. Now, Brett Kiesel shaved his beard and made $1 million over the years for Children's Hospital. Ben had his beard shaved and got on CNN. So I don't know really who has the bragging rights there, whether it's the $1 million or the exposure on CNN. I'll let the two of them decide, who is the king beard shaver among Steelers Nation.
Yeah, I think James Conner was on an ESPN podcast and he was asked about Ben's beard and he said that's definitely a Pittsburgh thing. You go back to Kiesel, so must be a Pittsburgh Steelers thing. Speaking of James Conner, guys, I had mentioned Mike Tomlin did a Steelers Nation Unite huddle last week answering fan questions kind of all over the board. And one of the things, I will read you his direct quote, he was kind of asked what his plans were for 2020 with the running backs, being that James Conner dealt with some injuries last year. They took Anthony McFarland in the draft. And here's what he said.
Yeah, you know, I'm a featured runner type guy by mentality. I think that, you know, when you have a featured runner, it gives them an opportunity to drop a stake in the ground. It allows others to rally around him. It gives you a set of core base run plays. James is a featured runner and a proven guy when healthy, and we're excited about him.
So that being said, Eddie Faulkner, the media got him on the phone after the draft. He did not tip his hand. If you guys were in charge of this group of running backs as we sit here today, Labs, you'll go first on this one. What would you do?
Well, I think that, you know, one of the things that has to be considered is, you know, the running back by committee, you know, that's a nice little phrase, and it's a interesting concept. But unless you have guys with all of the required skill sets to play the position, running, receiving, and then also pass protection, you are tipping your hand to the defense, right, Arthur, by who you put in the game. When you had Le'Veon Bell in the game, you didn't know what was going to happen. I think last year, when James Conner was injured, if you had Benny Snell in the game, you were kind of tipping your hand about what kind of play it was going to be. And then when you put Jalen Samuels in the game, you were tipping your hand about what kind of play it's going to be. And so I think that if the Steelers had or could develop quickly between now and the start of this upcoming regular season, another 3-down back like James Conner, then you can have running back by committee. If you can't, then, you know, I think that, I'm not saying that you run them till the wheels come off, but you can't have, you know, running back by committee assumes that they're equal, in my mind. I don't think you could do that if your talent of the two players are not equal. And so, you know, I understand the idea behind it, but how do you know when the guy, your lead dog, is going to get hurt so that you should take him out? I mean, if it's a fatigue injury, that's one thing. But if it's a torn cartilage or something, I mean, that's happenstance. I mean, there's no way of predicting when that's going to happen. And so I'm in favor of playing your best players. And to me, James Conner is by far the best guy. He is the only 3-down all-purpose, or the best 3-down all-purpose running back that the Steelers currently have. And until someone would impress me either on the practice field or in preseason games or something to being somewhat equal or comparable to him in all three of those requirements of the position, I'm going to primarily play James Conner when he needs a rest. That's one thing. But I'm not taking him out just to take him out to play the other guy.
All right, Arthur, use your defensive mindset to tell us if you agree or disagree with him.
Yeah, so there are some things that Labs hit on that I definitely agree with in terms of playing your best player, because that's going to give you your best chance to win. We definitely know that. And when you hear Coach Tomlin talk about he likes feature backs, I remember at the game, I believe this would have been in 2014, LeGarrette Blount, Le'Veon Bell was supposed to be hey, we're going to rotate you guys, running back by committee approach. But Le'Veon was taking off. Le'Veon was showing that he could be a feature back, a bell cow running back, and we ended up riding his heavy hand throughout the next couple of years, and you saw the success that breeded. So when you're thinking of James Conner in that same vein, absolutely, you would love to keep him out there. Now, the reason why this conversation has come up is because over the past couple of years, he hasn't been able to sustain good availability. He's missed a good amount of time, or when he's out there, he's still dealing with lingering injuries. So the way that you try to combat that is by the running back by committee approach. And even though, let's say, Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland, they aren't as complete as James, you use them in a sense to take a couple of those hits off of James. So even though we know they're not equal, if I can take 5 to 10 hits off of James a game, who knows, that might be the difference in him playing 10 games healthy or him playing 16 games healthy. So I think that's the approach they're taking right now in terms of just trying to figure that whole thing out. But those two guys that we're speaking of in terms of Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland, they do have to earn that right. They do have to show that they are comparable at least, because otherwise you'll be just wasting time for the sake of doing a running back by committee label.
Arthur, let me ask you this then. As a former player, you've been through it all with different teams as well. For the rookies and the new guys trying to get acclimated, how tough do you think this offseason is, being that it's uncertain and that right now they're not in the comforts of the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex, where Coach Tomlin does such a great job of teaching them about on the field stuff, but also off the field?
Yeah, man, I feel like they're extremely behind the eight ball. I understand from some of my conversations with them that they've done these same type of Zoom meetings with the coaching staff. They've done different virtual walkthroughs essentially, but that doesn't equate to you being in the building, the personal conversations and the interactions, things like that, being able to ask a coach, hey, instead of just talking about this, can you show me this? Walk me through these things. So I think in that regard, they definitely are behind the eight ball. But the one thing that you bank on in situations like this is the fact that when you look at the Steelers roster at each position, they do have guys who've been there before, guys who are not old, but do have experience in the NFL. And I think that's going to be the biggest key to those younger guys having success. They're going to have to lean on those resources a lot more in this offseason, because it's not your typical offseason where you're there every day. You got a chance to make mistakes in rookie minicamp. You have a chance to make mistakes during phase 1 of OTAs before you get to actually practice. You get all these chances to get on the field and talk with these coaches, to talk with the older players. Right now, they're not going to get those opportunities, so it definitely hinders them. But I do think with the older guys being there, like I said, they can help this thing be a success, handling this whole situation this offseason.
Labs, I don't know about you, but I'd love to be on the back patio of the practice fields watching Ben Roethlisberger throw some passes in OTAs right now.
Yeah, no, we used to, Missy, you and I were doing a lot of those back patio things. And, before we'd go on, we would, jokingly refer to it as football in shorts, which is how Mike Tomlin always referred to it. I could use some football in shorts right about now. So I guess you really don't know what you have until it's gone. And that even includes padless practices, football practices in May.
All right. Well, I appreciate both of you guys joining me today for the Steelers Virtual Roundtable. Stay safe. I'm sure we'll talk soon, and hopefully a return to football as well.
Yes, indeed.